This is the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd. If you're looking to generate wealth and passive income in the lucrative world of mobile home parks, you're in the right place. You'll discover solutions to the common legal and operational pitfalls and how to optimize parks to maximize income. Your host is in the trenches. He's a real estate attorney, financial analyst, and mobile home park investor and operator. Now, let's turn it over to Ferd.
Welcome back, Mobile Home Park Nation. Here again today with another episode of the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast. Today we're going to talk about amenities that will help you attract residents. Obviously, in our business, the name of the game is happy, satisfied, paying customers. So in order to get there, what do you need to do for your customers? Well, you need to attract them by a number of things, including price, but you also need to you want to keep them and retain them. And you do that by providing value, giving them a nice place to call home, a true community. Now, there are pros and cons to adding additional amenities to your park. The obvious con is you got to pay for it. The pro is the residents get the benefit of it. But there's other pros and cons you need to look at. Things like risk of, an insurance claim. For example, a playground is one we're going to go through. Kids could fall off the playground. So you're going to want a warning sign, a liability waiver, if you will. And I've got a copy that I can send you. Send me an email, and I'll get you a copy of the verbiage that we use on our playground signs to kind of protect us from liability. But you're going to want to talk to your specific insurance provider as well for some of these things. Some of them are probably not going to matter. Adding flowers, not going to be a concern. Putting in a pool, big concern. You need to make sure you have proper insurance. But in the end, the goal is to provide a safe, joyful environment for your residents. And that'll keep them happy and keep them coming back month after month after month. So I'm going to jump into them. I've identified 17 amenities to help attract residents to your mobile home park. These are in no particular order, but I'll give a couple opinions as far as pros and cons. First up is a community center. A community center could be as simple as a little room for people to hang out, read a book, etc. I've seen community centers that have, arcades, that have pool tables, ping pong tables, eating areas. Sometimes the office is attached to these. Sometimes there's other ancillary things like the pool and playground attached to them. But community center, you're probably not going to see this in your lower tier parks or your small, 10 to 30 lot parks, but you'll definitely see them in your parks with 200 lots. So community center would be a great amenity to have. The second amenity I'm talking about here is a playground. Playground you could get as cheap as $1,000. I would recommend more like a $3,000 lifetime playground. If you got a big community or if you've got a lot of kids that you want to attract, and young families, then you may want to splurge for something a little bigger. $10,000-$15,000 playground. Obviously, that's expensive. I just became pretty fortunate myself in my hometown. The school district closed down a bunch of schools, and one of the guys that bought the abandoned schools is converting them into senior housing. He had no need for the playground, so I was able to buy 3 commercial playground sets, about $50,000 a piece. I was able to buy 3 of them for $10,000. So that was a good find by my dad, and we had to take them down, repaint them, transport them to 3 different cities, and then install them. So we were all in for probably $8,000 or $9,000 a pop. But we got a heavy-duty, large playground. It's been a nice amenity, really kind of going above and beyond for our residents there. Number 3, you can be pet friendly. You got to talk to insurance. Some people don't like dogs at all in their parks. But if you let people have dogs, you're gonna be ahead of the competition, at least from an attraction standpoint. We've even built dog parks in some of our communities, just little fenced-in areas where the dogs can run. In the communities where we do allow dogs, we have real strict rules that, one, we have to have pet insurance covering us as an additional insured with a liability amount of at least $300,000. That costs about $2 a month on top of renter's insurance, so it's very inexpensive, but it's massively beneficial to me as the landlord to protect me. And then the next rule we have is your dog can never be left outside alone, meaning definitely not running around and not even staked up. The dog must either be A, in your house, B, attached to a leash with an adult human's hand on the other end of that leash, or C, in the dog park. And if you have a dog that's aggressive or has any sort of other problems, it's a one-strike policy. We're going to get rid of the dog. But that's a scary issue. If a dog eats a 5-year-old or something, it's going to ruin your weekend for sure. Luckily, thank God, I never had that happen. Number 4, a grilling and seating area. I've got one of these right by the dog park, and it's just picnic benches. I buy some old grills. Like you see grills on the side of the road. You can take an old propane grill, and the tank doesn't work, and just convert it into a charcoal grill. Those can get kicked around and knocked over by kids, so the better option would be to buy the heavy-duty charcoal grill that is cemented into the ground. This is kind of a common amenity at RV parks. I think it's becoming more popular in mobile home parks. It seems to get pretty good use. The downside of that is sometimes it creates a place for teenagers to loiter. And, if there's kids in my community, that's not a big deal to me. But depending on where you're located, I've got one park on a busy street. And I don't want a bunch of neighborhood kids hanging out smoking cigarettes. And, just, collecting after dark and all that kind of stuff as well. So that's why I got rid of some fire pits too. I don't have that on my list as an amenity, but fire pits are, people like them, but I don't want to provide a community fire pit because it creates just an area to hang out in the dark that I don't really want to attract. Number 5 is horseshoes. This is a pretty inexpensive, game for people. The downside of horseshoes is, depending on your community, you've got an object, a projectile that you're just leaving there on the ground for somebody to throw. So associated with horseshoes is things like bags or cornhole, frisbee, golf. Those sort of items can be thrown. Obviously, a frisbee's not going to cause as much damage as a horseshoe. So pros and cons to that, but very inexpensive. I've done it with like a cornhole game and stuff. People, say, okay, at least you care a little bit, and you're giving me some free games. Those sort of things are hard to maintain, frankly, because kids just disappear. They get broken, horseshoes go missing, all that kind of stuff. But a pretty inexpensive amenity. A new one that is really popular here in Kansas City is pickleball. I don't know if you've ever played pickleball, but it's kind of like a mix between ping pong and tennis. And it's been really popular. I've even seen some apartment complexes tear out their old tennis courts and put in pickleball courts with seating areas. So that's kind of where I get some of these ideas too. Is the MH industry's been a little behind on the apartment industry as far as amenities and design and some of these things. So we can catch up and just kind of steal some of their ideas. The next one is a bocce court. Bocce ball. I don't know if you ever played that. It's like a small bowling ball, and you throw them, and then you throw a little balls like a golf ball, and you throw the bocce balls, and you try to land closer to the golf ball. It's basically an excuse to sit there and drink beer with your buddies and pretend you're athletic. But it's kind of fun. I've got a bocce set. I got a little bag of it in my garage. We get it out and play sometimes. Number 8 is a swimming pool. I think everybody knows what a swimming pool is. Obviously, this is a potential liability risk, massive expense. I do not currently have any swimming pools, and I don't intend to put any in personally. But if the big parks that the big institutional guys own that are 200, 300 lots, I think this is kind of expected to have an amenity like this. A newer, cheaper option, number 9, would be a splash pad, or kind of a splash park. My kids and I go to one of these near our home. It's not in my community, but it's a city park, and it's basically little water fountains and flowing water, and it's softer land, so it's safer, so to speak, than concrete. Probably less liability for sure, less expense. You still got the water expense. You still have an installation expense. I've been trying to get budgets on one of these. I think I've heard they're around 25 to 50 grand to put in, so not inexpensive. I've not put one in myself. I've been thinking about it, which is why I'm getting some bids. But it's a pretty nice amenity to add to your community. Number 10 is a laundromat. I don't see these very often anymore. I've had some parks that have laundromats, but they're the old original laundromats back when the trailers were 8 and 10 and 12 feet wide, and they didn't have room for washer dryer. All the new mobile homes have washer dryer hookups at least, so you see the laundromats going away. Some people love these because they're a cash cow, and they don't report the taxable income of the coins and stuff. The downside of a laundromat to me is it creates an attractive place to hang out, or potentially a place of risk. If I was a young woman, I wouldn't want to be in the laundromat building doing my laundry at 10 o'clock at night, and anybody can just come in and be in there with me. So if you put one of these in, I definitely would recommend security cameras and or limited hours or limited access. Number 11 is bulk cable and internet. This is a lot of people do this. I'll tell you honestly, it's pretty hard to negotiate bulk cable internet unless you've got a big portfolio. I was trying to do it for a couple hundred lots, and it was at one time in the same kind of trade area, and they just laughed at me like you're not big enough. And I went through Worth Telecom, it's a big company that does this, and they're like, we can't get you in on your own. We got to piggyback you on another contract. We got another 10,000 unit contract going in. Well, so it was going to, one, the challenge was being big enough in a certain trade area. Two was making it worth it from a brain damage and an expense. The goal here as a park owner would be, hey, your tenants are spending $150 a month, for example, on cable and internet. You sign either an exclusive or a non-exclusive agreement with, call it Spectrum Cable Internet, and they give you bulk pricing at, say, $50 a month. You then provide that as an amenity to your residents. Say, hey, free cable and internet. But by the way, lot rent just went up $51 or $149. And you can, make some extra money, but also give some savings to your residents. I'll tell you, I got a client that did this, and he hated it because now you're basically the utility provider. And if you have problems with your internet and stuff, the tenants can call you. Sometimes, if you give an exclusive agreement, you now have you're taking away HBO or you're taking away Comcast or something else from somebody, so they get pissy at you. So that could be a challenge. The other challenge that I had a park that I was going to do this on, I was like 50% occupied at the time, and I had to pay the rate per month for every lot, including the vacant lots. So I didn't want to do that until I got to like 75% occupancy. It was kind of like my break-even point. When once I got to that occupancy, I still it didn't make sense for some of these other negative reasons. So I have not actually done bulk cable internet. I've come close 2 or 3 times, and it's never been. I've never got over the hump with it. I know a lot of big players do it, but the last time I did it just because that trade area just didn't make sense from a size perspective. Another benefit of it for the landlord is they will give you a per door fee up front. Maybe $100 a door. So if I had a park that was like 93 units, it was $9,300 right out of the gate. That would have been pretty cool, but there was an obligation to pay on an ongoing basis. Number 12 is a gated community. I think everybody knows what this is. This would be more common in a very high-end, perhaps a senior-only or perhaps a coastal community where it's actually gated entry. Number 13 are water features. These could be obviously as small as a little water fountain to as big as, there's a park near me that has a massive lake with a gazebo island in the middle with a big water fountain. I mean, it's $100,000 plus feature. So, but those sort of things make people feel like they're in a real neighborhood, right? And same thing with landscaping. Number 14 is like, make this place nice. You can do landscaping for $1, probably not one, but you could do $100 to $100,000. But it adds some ambiance and some nice touch to your community. We typically plant rose bushes. The next item, number 15, kind of covers this: flowers, fencing, signage. We typically put white picket fencing at all the corners of our parks, and then kind of an entry gate, and then we plant 2 rose bushes in front of each one. So you may have 60 rose bushes. So not inexpensive if you're paying $15 a pop for them, but it's well worth it in my opinion, because if rose bushes make it the first 6 months, we like to use knockout roses that grow 3-4 feet tall. If they make it the first 6 months, which basically means you water them once every couple days at the beginning, then once a week, then they'll last forever. For the most part. I've got knockout roses in front of my house. They're 15 years old, and they still look great. You got to trim them up once a year, but not really that big a deal. Signage, we usually put an entry sign at the front and back of the park. You could do this as low as $1,500. Really, you could do it lower than that, but we usually spend about $1,500. Put a rock wall around it, put some bushes and stuff in front of it, some mulch, color. Put our Facebook logo and our name of the community. Maybe identify the school district or some other nice amenity. So signage is definitely an inexpensive way to improve the decor of your park. Number 16 would be sports facilities. This would be, perhaps a geographic base, but you want to put in a basketball court, a tennis court. Some places have golf courses, believe it or not. There's one in my hometown that's got a 9-hole golf course. Put in soccer goals. I'm looking at putting some soccer goals in the spring. Basketball. And really all of these, I think I would, whether or not I'd spend the money on these would depend on, one, do you have enough youth that want to use it? But 2, does the location attract more people than you want? So if you've got a park that's off by itself, like I've got one that I was looking at putting kind of some soccer goals in that's off by itself. It's like on a state highway. There's no walk-up traffic. So I'm not worried about loitering or other neighbor kids. I've got another park that's on a really busy street. If I put a basketball hoop in there, I'd have 50 kids skipping class playing basketball every day, and I don't want that. So I'm definitely not going to put a basketball court in there. But that's a case-by-case basis on the sports facilities. I see them once in a while. They're not that common, in my opinion, but yeah, I don't know if it's 1% or 5%, but there's definitely not a third of all mobile home parks have a basketball court. Number 17, office maintenance and management staff. Is that an amenity? Yes and no. I consider it an amenity because, like, some of my parks, they're very low maintenance and very low staff, but that's just because they're stable, or because there's no park-owned homes, or because they're small. Got some other parks where we have full-time maintenance and full-time management, and that's a big plus. And that's one of the things that we notice when we buy a park is there's often a ton of deferred maintenance, and the last guy didn't do anything. So the first couple of months, man, you're just bombarded with the last guy said he'd fix this, the last guy said he'd fix this, and they never did. So having that level of touch, customer service, and presence is really something that tenants appreciate. And from a chaos perspective, we typically now have a phone number as a grasshopper line. Ours is 1-833 MHP rent. You can call it if you want, just to see how that works. Just say this is a test or something, so that my team doesn't waste their time calling you back. But you can call that number and say, click 1 for management maintenance, click 2 for leasing, click 3 for headquarters. And that option 3 is really an opportunity for the residents to report something about the manager. So if the manager's the problem, if they tell the manager's not going to tell me. So they can go to the manager's head by calling headquarters. That almost never happens that anybody hits number 3. But if they do, it's generally because, hey, I already called maintenance and the guy didn't show up or something. But anyway, I think that's a nice touch to have that grasshopper line. It's pretty inexpensive. I think it's like $38 a month. And it goes straight to voicemail and gives you a transcription and a recording. So those are my 17 amenities to help attract your MHP residents. As you all well know, attracting and retaining residents is definitely one of the key components of mobile home park ownership. Till next time.
You've been listening to the Mobile Home Park Lawyer Podcast with Ferd Neiman. Ready to learn more? Go to www.themobilehomelawyer.com for free resources and materials to help you succeed. If you love the podcast, go to Apple Podcasts, give us your review, and subscribe today. Thank you for listening. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri nor the Missouri Bar reviews nor approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely upon advertisements.